Hey, what's up you guys, the Curious Owl here, and today I have my January 2024 TBR. So January is going to be a crazy month. We've got Battle of the Bookish, we've got Wheel of D20, which I basically failed at the last couple of months, and so have to catch back up with that. Book clubs, all that stuff. I'm also partaking in a buddy reading session with my sister and my mom this year, so very excited for all of that. But let's just go ahead and get into the Wheel of D20 stuff, because that's kind of the more important thing to get done first, and then we'll go through and talk about all the books that will be fulfilled for Battle of the Bookish, stuff like that. Okay guys, so here we are to do our rules. So for the first one, for the historical prompt, I have picked two books that I think are kind of historical. One is My Dear Henry by Kaylin Bayron. This is technically, I think, a retelling where it is a Jekyll and Hyde retelling, but in like a totally different spin on it. I don't quite know necessarily what it is, but I heard it was pretty decent. Then I have A Newlywed's Guide to Fortune and Murder by Diane Freeman. This is the sixth and newest book in the Countess of Harley mysteries, which is a cozy historical fiction mystery series that I absolutely adore, placed in the 1800s. So definitely hits that historical vibe and gives a lot of really nice cozy feelings. Very quick read, both of these, but let's see which one we end up going with. And that is a natural 2. So we are going to go with My Dear Henry by Kaylin Bayron. Have really liked her writing previously, so I hope that I like this one as well. Okay, next we have the shelf generator prompt. Now I did this off camera because I didn't really have the ability to film very well with my camera being dead, so we just basically randomized a couple shelves. These actually both came from the same main shelf, but different sections of that main shelf, which was kind of cool. But we have Nora Roberts' Chasing Destiny. This is a book that I got used when I first started reading some Nora Roberts and kind of gotten a kick of finding her books. So I've liked her writing somewhat, so I'm kind of interested to see how this one goes since it's been a minute since I've read her work. And then the other one ended up being Final Girls by Riley Sager. Now I've not yet read a Riley Sager book, but have heard really good things about his books in particular, and this one in particular being one of the favorites, I believe, of his books. So let's see which one we end up going with for the shelf generator prompt. And that is a natural 9. So we're going to end up going with Chasing Destiny. This is going to be interesting, not going to lie. I do not know how I'm going to fare with this because I feel like Nora Roberts can be very hit or miss for a lot of people. But you know what? I'm willing to give her a chance and see what I actually think, because it's been a minute, like I said, since I've read some of her books. The reason I don't have anything here for the next prompt is because I don't have these books physically, or there's kind of something different going on with this one. But this is the Sprint Chat Picked My Reads prompt. So for actually what ended up happening was that somebody recommended I read Will and Worthy and do kind of like a comparison of the two books, so that I could like talk about them in terms of like, you know, with the slap and all this, the drama going on with Will and Jada Pinkett Smith. And so I decided that if I wanted to do that for a video project, I would do that, where I would read the two of them together and do a video on them, comparing them. But then if I rolled something lower, I would have to respin the wheel at no cost to me, but to find basically a different prompt that I can essentially pick a book from that would fit this. Might not be something completely in my wheelhouse, you know, something like that. So we'll see what we end up getting. Let's see. And that is a natural 18. So guess we're gonna do the video project this month. We're gonna read Will and Worthy and kind of see my thoughts on it, I guess. Okay, so now we have the oldest book on my TBR prompt. Now, technically, this would be the oldest book in terms of age, I think, that I have on my TBR. Maybe. I don't know. I definitely know it's one of the oldest books books I've wanted to read for the longest time, for sure, because I remember when this series came out first. I read the first book already here like maybe a couple of years ago or so, but I remember this series being really, really big when I was in elementary school, and so I've kind of wanted to read the rest of it since then. Only read the first book, really enjoyed it, but never continued, and I kind of been wanting to go back to this series, so maybe this would jumpstart me. But then otherwise, the oldest series I think that's been on my TBR since being on BookTube has really been finishing the Mortal Instruments and reading, you know, all the Shadowhunter world, which I still am interested in. It's just kind of one of those things where, like, I've heard so many people, especially with this series, talk so lukewarmly about it that I've kind of just gotten caught up in other things and putting this aside. But I did really enjoy the first two books after my second and third reread of them, so definitely interested to see at least how the rest of the series goes, considering that the last time I read books 1 and 2, I really enjoyed them more so than I ever had before. So I think that this could be a good contender, but let's see what the dice have to say about this one. And we get a natural 17, so that does mean I will be reading City of Glass this month, which not too mad about that. Definitely have been meaning to read this for a while, so I guess let's do it. And finally, the last group is our book club reads. Now, The Last Wish by Andrzej Sapkowski. This is my read for the Witcher read-along that I am doing this year. If you haven't seen the announcement video for this, go check it out. But basically, we're going to be reading The Last Wish in the month of January for that, with the live show going to be in February. And then I'm actually hoping to do a buddy read with my younger sister. We've been meaning to do this for a long time, but have never really gotten around to it. But recently, we've been kind of talking about it more and more, and that is by reading Ninth House. This is actually the first book my sister and I had wanted to do a buddy reading of. Technically, A Court of Thorns and Roses was like our first buddy read of sorts. I read the series before she did, and she really, really liked it, and she's been really excited to read Ninth House. I've been really excited to read it for a while. I have Hellbent. She has Hellbent, I think, now as well. If not, we'll have it soon, hopefully. But then we also want to read Fourth Wing, and we want to read the House of Blood and whatever other Sarah J. Maas book, and Throne of Glass. Like, there's a lot of series that we want to read together, but this was the first one that she and I both had really wanted to read together as a duo, so we're gonna see if we can get this one done in the month. But let's see which one of these ends up going on my TBR for the Wheel of D20. And we get a natural 18. So not only is The Last Wish going to be read in January for my book club, but it is also going to be on my Wheel of D20 TBR. So I will have a separate video for this though, so it's not going to be in the Wheel of D20 video per se, but at least I get to kill a few birds with one stone with this book. So as you guys saw, we went through and got all of our picks for the Wheel of D20, and the first one for the historical prompt basically is going to be My Dear Henry by Kaylin Bayron. This is a remix basically of the Jekyll and Hyde story by Robert Louis Stevenson. All I know is that this has two male characters that kind of fall in love with each other. One of them is kind of the more Jekyll side, and one is more of the Hyde side, but they're two distinct different guys. So this is a really short one, so I think I'm going to enjoy it. I've loved Kaylin Bayron's work so far, and so would really like to see that this would be the same. Although I have heard some mixed things about it, I'm pretty confident I'm going to at least like the writing style, because I really liked Cinderella is Dead a lot. Next, for the shelf generator prompt, we ended up going with Chasing Destiny by Nora Roberts, which apparently is actually a collection of two shorter stories, and they're actually the last two books in a series. Next, we have the Sprint Chat Picks prompt, which for this I'm going to be reading Will, and I also will be reading Worthy within this. I'm going to put Will though as the one for the Wheel of D20, because technically you're supposed to read this before Worthy, for a lot of people at least, is what have told me of this set of books. So Will is basically Will Smith's memoir, Worthy is Jada Pinkett Smith's memoir, and apparently you read the two of them together, you kind of get an idea of who you side with in the couple more than the other. Basically, Sprint Chats just wanted me to do that for some reason. They thought that would be really fun. So, you know, why not? I'll do it. I'll figure it out. I'll see what I think. And there might be a video that comes out about this. I don't know. Or at the very least, I'll talk about it in the Wheel of D20 video that I'll be coming out with in the month. Next, we had the oldest book on my TBR, which for this I ended up going with City of Glass by Cassandra Clare, the third book in the Mortal Instruments series. Excited to get back into this world. Been enjoying the series so far with my several attempt reread of the books because I could never finish the series, so I'm finally going to hopefully be able to get through more of that and hopefully finish the series eventually. And finally, for the book club pick, we ended up going with The Last Wish, which is my book club pick for the Witcher read-along that I am doing in 2024. This is the first set of short stories that are like basically prequel stories to The Witcher, so we will be reading this in the month of January if you would like to join in on the read-along with us, with the live show going to be the first weekend of February. Okay, so let's get into the Battle of the Bookish prompts for this year. So we have got the theme of Avatar: The Last Airbender for our theme for this month-long round of Battle of the Bookish. If you missed out on the announcement video, I will leave that down in the description. But let's go ahead and start with the general prompts, which are the prompts that all the teams get to use. Essentially, they're not ascribed to any specific team. So for the LGBTQ prompt, I ended up going with My Dear Henry because, again, this has two male characters and it is a male-male romance of sorts. For the Just Read prompt, I'm going with Will just because it's a really easy read. It doesn't really fit any of the other prompts I have for Battle of the Bookish, so this works out just well. For TBR Vet, we are going with City of Glass because this is a book that's been on my TBR for a long time. The entire series has been on my list for a long time. For a book with pictures, I decided I'm going to pick back up and restart Saga by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. I'm going to start back at volume 1 and hopefully try to read the entire series up to date this year. Maybe even in this month, depending on how things go. Before, basically this is like a sci-fi Romeo and Juliet where you've got two characters who are from opposite ends of the war that is going on in this time, and they end up having a baby. And so then there's like all hell breaks loose. People are looking to kill them, all these things, and they're trying to basically save themselves and save their child. Then for a reread, I am going to go with The Last Wish because this will be a reread for me in particular. I have read this before and will be reading it for, I think, the second time all the way through. Okay, so let's get into the team prompts now that I have. I am going with the Water team. Now, one of my prompts I don't necessarily have anything slated for as of yet. It really depends on which of my other books end up filling this, but it is the Polls prompt, which is to read something with like a winter setting of some kind. So once I find a book that really kind of hits that, like there is like some kind of winter setting involved in the book, I will use that for this, but I don't have anything as of yet that is telling me that it has a winter setting of any kind. Next, for the prompt of displacement, which basically has the characters either needing to move from one place to another or are otherwise displaced from their actual home, we are going with Chasing Destiny as one of the characters in this specific collection. The first book is going to be living in New York. She's moving to New York, so that has like a huge effect on the actual story. Then for the prompt Cora, which is to read a book that is either a sequel or companion story to something that you've read. I'm going to be reading Ascender Volume 1 because this is a companion series to a graphic novel series I have been reading in the past, which is Descender by Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen. This basically is a sci-fi story where this takes place, I think, 10 years after the events of Descender, but I will be reading Descender as well, but I'm hoping to read the entire collection of this series as well in the month of January because I would really like to be able to finally finish this series. I've restarted Descender several times and want to restart it again to finally finish it and then move into Ascender, which then next for the prompt of UA, which is to read a book with a moon on a cover. we're going with Descender Volume 1 because Descender Volume 1 has a moon on the cover. And again, I want to read the rest of the series and finally finish it, move on to Ascender, and then finally be done with this series because I've been meaning to for a while. I really do like this series a lot, and I just want to finally be done with it. And finally, the last book, which is for Battle of the Bookish, is for the Prompt Paku, which is to read a book with a mentor character. I don't have this physically, and I'm waiting for my library hold to come in for it, but it is going to be Haikyuu Volume 5 by Haruchi Furutate. This is a manga series that is about a high school volleyball team, a high school boys volleyball team, and essentially the two characters that are involved in this, one is more skilled at volleyball than the other, but they have to basically be on the same team even though they hate each other. And so it's kind of this exploration of why it is that they hate each other, what is it that they're trying to gain from their feud essentially, but then how do they work together. And the mentors in this are more so the older boys that are on this team. They are the ones that they are learning a lot from in terms of being teammates and being team players and things like that. This is probably my favorite manga series I have gotten into so far, and I've loved reading it, so I want to finally continue with getting through Volume 5 since that is the last one I had been on. We're going to get into book club picks and stuff like that. So Brandy's book club has not quite yet picked a book for the January book club, so I'm going to leave that open for right now, and maybe that'll fit into something that I need to later. But for my book club, like I said, the Witcher 2024 read-along, we will be reading The Last Wish. This is a really fairly short series of short stories, and I'm just excited to talk with everybody about it because I know especially like this series with the TV show had been, when it had got really popular, people were really liking it, and so I loved this the first time I read it. I want to see how everybody else feels about it too. Then for Witchathon, Witchathon is doing a year-long readathon thing where every month you have a different prompt to fulfill that is essentially working with one of the different gods that is associated within each month. So for the month of January, our prompt is to read either a dystopian book or a historical fiction, which for that I'm gonna go with My Dear Henry by Caitlin Bayron because again, this is supposed to be more historical fiction. It's placed in the 19th century, is inspired by and essentially a retelling of the story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde from Robert Louis Stevenson, which was placed in like the 19th century. So definitely worked well with that. And then finally, the last thing I am going to be reading is more so something I started in December because my sister, my mom, and I all decided to pick it up and do a buddy read of it, and that is Fourth Wing. We are reading Fourth Wing and Iron Flame together, more so in anticipation for the next book, but mostly because my sister and I have been wanting to read this together for a while. We are doing a buddy read. We should be done with this within the first few days of January, since we're reading like 50 pages or so a day. And I'm 50 pages into this, still have yet to read my pages for the day that I'm recording this, but I'm already loving it so far. I really like the way that the story is set up at the very beginning. I like how we kind of just get right into the action of things. I'm not a huge fan of the main love interest that I know we are supposed to be involved with, but I'm fairly certain that my mind will change over time because as it usually is when I meet the love interest, I don't usually like them at first, and then I find that they're, you know, something I can actually kind of agree with, but we'll see. We'll see, because I've got very strong feelings of this main love interest, and they're not nice things. So without further ado, more or less, this is the TBR for the month of January. Obviously, there's a lot more graphic novels that'll be thrown on here. I also don't have Worthy or Haikyuu Volume 5 here with me currently, so this is a much bigger stack than probably it looks now, but will I get through all of them? Maybe. I do go back to work basically on the 3rd, so I might have less time, and I don't know, I'm trying to be more kind with myself and actually allow myself to sit and read because I was in a bit of a weird slump where I couldn't really force myself to read at all and I had no energy to, and I've kind of been getting back in the swing of reading again here in the last week or so because I think I'm just so excited to read some of these things, and so I think that that is what's propelling me, and so I think that with this TBR, this is going to be really interesting, and I will be hopefully reading other books
outside of this that I will be hopefully posting on TikTok. So if you don't follow me on TikTok, make sure to do so, because I will be hopefully posting more content on there. And I also post every day almost my witchy content, stuff that is involving my business. So would really appreciate it if you would follow, you know, to at least keep up to date with that. And I have a ton of stuff that I'm planning on in January putting out over the course of the month, also on my Instagram and on my Facebook page, stuff like that. So definitely go check those out if you are interested in any of that and if you would like to see more content from me. But thank you guys so much for joining me in this video. If you guys did enjoy it, please do give it a big thumbs up. And if you haven't already and you'd like to see more content like this, go ahead and hit that button down below and subscribe to become an owlet in our flock. And I will see all of you guys in my next video. Bye guys!